εδώ και αρκετά χρόνια με τα ομογενειακά, με το να δίνει διαλέξεις. Απόψε, όταν θα φύγουμε από εδώ, θα είμαστε όλοι λίγο πιο πολύ μορφωμένοι. Αν και η διάλεξη είναι στα αγγλικά, καταλαβαίνουμε νομίζω όλοι μας, θα φύγουμε πιο μορφωμένοι. Έχω την τιμή να σας παρουσιάσω το co-chairman της παρέλασης, συμπρόεδρο της Επιτροπής Παρελάσεως 2020, κύριο Λου Κάτσο. Λου.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I don't know if you're going to become more familiar, but maybe we'll become more tribal, which I think will be very interesting. The topic, let me give you a little bit of background with regards to what we're trying to do. One of the things that I've mentioned at the meetings that we have on Thursday regarding the parade is that we have to do things that promote the parade. One of the things that I wanted to promote in particular had to do with the various aspects of the parade. In other words, there are many different angles to the Hellenic Revolution, and it's very important that we get the word out to our communities on those various aspects. For example, many of you had your relatives, your ancestors who fought in the revolution from different areas. So, for example, people may be from Laconia, some people may be from Messenia, some people may be from Thessalia, some people may be from Macedonia, etc. And I thought it would be very nice, as an example, to start talking about one of the areas so at least the other societies can step up and basically do their own lectures with regards to their particular societies, where they came from, and give the community, give us all aspects of the revolution that some of us may not understand or know. When we talk about a parade is very interesting, but there's things behind the parade. It's one thing to say that we have the largest Greek Independence Day parade in the world. It's another thing to say that we and our children understand the various aspects of what took place actually prior to 1821 and post-1821, and why, in fact, we were liberated when other people were not liberated. It's certainly very important to do this, and what I decided to do is say, okay, I'll volunteer to speak about a topic that sometimes people don't really discuss, and that has to do with the origins and the start of the revolution. For those who may not understand, the concept of revolutions is something that started in 1453 with the fall of Constantinople. We all of a sudden historically think of Constantinople falls, nothing happened in between, we were enslaved for 400 years, and then all of a sudden we had a revolution and we were free. That's not what happened. The revolution actually started with the fall of Constantinople. And if you look at the history of Greece and those areas that make up today the Greek Republic, you'll see that for hundreds of years, there was revolution after revolution after revolution after revolution. Some of those revolutions were isolated, and some of those were major. You know, a more major one, let's say, is the Orlov Rebellion of 1770, which was a major revolution during that time period. The other thing to keep in mind is that the world, when we had the revolution of 1821, the world focused on what was taking place in Greece. Prior to the Greek Revolution, there was a very powerful revolution in the Serbian territories in the early 1800s. But no one hears about the Serbian Revolution of the early 1800s. But most people know about the revolution of 1821 in Greece. And what I'd like to do today is really discuss, again, what I call the start of the revolution, because, as I said, there was revolution after revolution after revolution, but they failed for different reasons. But there was a reason why in March of 1821 that a revolution was declared, and in fact Greece became independent. And it begins in some ways with Epiros. So I decided to take the topic of Epiros, and I'm going to discuss Alí Pasá. Yanina obviously was his pastchalik. The warrior societies, again, which is some topic that's usually not discussed by many people. What do you mean by the warrior societies? And the start of the revolution. Bear with me. Here's Alí Pasá, of course. Prior to the revolution, this is a sample of what the Ottoman Empire was in around 1817. And as you see, it takes into account all of northern Africa. It takes into account Egypt, etc. It takes into account part of Saudi Arabia. It takes into account, obviously, the coastline of a lot of areas relating to what is now the Middle East, and certainly what is now the Turkish Republic, Greece, and all the Balkan nations. Obviously, we all know that the Ottoman Empire was stopped in Vienna, and it was quite an extensive empire. At the time, the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire was Mahmud II. His reign was 1808 to 1839. His reign was during the Hellenic Revolution, obviously. And he did a lot of different things, a lot of tremendous things, actually. He actually helped to reestablish the Ottoman Empire, which was becoming weaker and weaker at that particular time. He also was the Sultan that destroyed the Janissaries. In 1826, he wiped out the Janissaries. Alí Pasá lived quite a long life, as you see. He died when he was 82 years old. This is one of the books that has come out recently. They refer to him many times as the Lion of Yanina. Other books refer to him as the Muslim Bonaparte. And we'll describe why in a second. As you see the date, and I indicated that at last Thursday meetings, Friday was the anniversary of his death. And Wednesday was also the anniversary of the birth of Lord Byron. The court of Alí Pasá, again, for people who don't realize this, was a court that the official language was the Hellenic language. Alí Pasá spoke the Hellenic language fluently, and his wife, Kyria Vasiliki, was obviously a Hellenic woman. So when we think about Ali, many people have different interpretations of Ali. We have, let's say, post-histories of people who are talking about him and who he was, the Albanian chieftain and all the rest of that. But Ali, during his lifetime, and we'll go through a little bit about it, but not a tremendous amount. Ali, during his lifetime, was a person that basically never pushed being, for example, an Albanian. And when we talk about Hellenism, in the court of Ali was major universities, major libraries, major institutions that related to Hellenic society. As a matter of fact, the Library of Yanina became eventually the National Library of Greece. A lot of the books obviously were burned from that particular time period, but the basis of the Hellenic library, the National Library, was in fact from the court of Alí Pasá. Ali's area, or what they call Ayalit or Pashalik, was this particular area right here, which incorporates Epiros and incorporates parts of what is now Thessaly. So you can see it right there, this area right here. During that time period, we have obviously the Ionian Islands. The Ionian Islands, which were never occupied by the Turks. The Ionian Islands, from an early time period, were controlled by Venice, then by the French, prior to the revolution, and finally by the English. And it then incorporated, the Ionian Islands were incorporated in Greece in 1864. So this was a place where many people escaped to, and we'll describe the escape in a second. And it starts with Kythera and goes all the way up into the Corfu area. This, though, gives you the extent of Ali's influence during the period of time, based on a few things. Number one, he had a couple of sons, Mukhtar and Veli, Mukhtar Pasha and Veli Pasha. At the height of his power, the Moria was under one son, and that was Veli Pasha. Other territories in terms of Thessaly and Macedonia, etc., were under the control of another son, Mukhtar, and he had alliances with various other Pasadas. So at the time period that we're talking about, at the height of his power, he was an extremely powerful individual, not only with the Ottoman Empire or in the Ottoman Empire, but actually one of the most powerful people in the world at that particular time. The French sent ambassadors to the court of Ali. The English sent ambassadors to the court of Ali. At points in time, because Ali had no alliances. Ali's alliances related to the circumstance of the moment. He was obviously one of the most wealthiest persons in the world at that particular time, because Ali also was a person that took everybody's money. He did fight the French and defeated them. He did then reverse himself and link up with the Russians. So Ali was one of these extremely wily characters in history, one of the most fascinating people within history. He started as a bandit, and then eventually, through his power grabs and all the rest of that, he became, as we said, the Pasha of Yanina in that particular area.